Location: rural area of Weed, California near Mount Shasta. Time period: 1972. Chapter 1. The Arrival. In the summer of 1972, the serene tranquility of the Mount Shasta area was disrupted by the buzz of construction. Nestled within the dense forest, several cabins were being built on sprawling 5 to 10 acre plots. The cabins, envisioned as vacation homes, promised to offer an escape from the hustle and bustle of urban life. However, as the trees fell and the land was cleared, something ancient and restless was disturbed. Thomas and Ellen Richardson were among the first to purchase a plot. Drawn by the promise of solitude and nature's beauty, they eagerly awaited the completion of their cabin. They envisioned weekends spent hiking and evenings around a crackling fireplace. Little did they know, the forest had its own plans. As the construction crews set to work, locals began to whisper about strange occurrences. Tools would go missing, only to be found later in peculiar places. Workers reported feeling watched, and some even claimed to hear eerie, guttural noises from deep within the woods. These stories were dismissed as superstitions or the result of exhaustion, but the forest seemed to bristle with a sense of foreboding. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the towering pines, Thomas and Ellen arrived to inspect the progress on their cabin. The air was thick with the scent of pine and earth, and the only sounds were the distant calls of birds and the rustling of leaves. The couple marveled at the beauty of the place, unaware of the eyes that watched from the shadows. Chapter 2. Unsettling Discoveries. Weeks passed, and the Richardsons' cabin neared completion. They decided to spend their first night in their new retreat. As they settled in, a sense of unease began to creep in. The forest, usually so full of life, seemed unnaturally still. Ellen couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, and Thomas, though reluctant to admit it, felt the same. That night they were awoken by a series of strange noises. At first it sounded like branches snapping underfoot, but then came a low, guttural growl that sent chills down their spines. Thomas grabbed a flashlight and cautiously stepped outside. The beam of light cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but the empty clearing and the dense wall of trees. The next morning they discovered deep, claw-like marks on the side of their cabin. Thomas tried to dismiss it as the work of a bear, but the sheer size and depth of the gouges suggested something far more formidable. Ellen was convinced that it wasn't an animal they were dealing with, but something else entirely. Word of the Richardsons' encounter spread quickly among the new cabin owners and the local townsfolk. The old-timers spoke of Bigfoot, a legendary creature said to roam the forests of the Pacific Northwest. Skeptical but intrigued, Thomas and Ellen decided to investigate further. Chapter 3. The Gathering Darkness. As summer turned to fall, more cabins were completed and more families began to spend weekends in the forest. With them came more reports of strange occurrences. Lights flickering in the dead of night, unidentifiable footprints, and that same unsettling feeling of being watched. Teenagers from the nearby town saw the new cabins as an opportunity for mischief. They would sneak into the vacant homes, leaving behind a trail of beer bottles and graffiti. While some of the vandalism was undoubtedly their doing, there were incidents that couldn't be explained away so easily. One night, a group of teenagers dared each other to spend the night in the forest, hoping to catch a glimpse of the legendary Bigfoot. Armed with flashlights and bravado, they ventured deep into the woods. Hours passed, and as the moon reached its zenith, they heard it. A low, guttural growl, followed by the sound of something massive moving through the underbrush. Panic set in, and the teenagers bolted, leaving behind their belongings in their haste. The next day, when they returned to retrieve their things, they found their campsite in disarray. Tents were torn and deep claw marks marred the trees. Whatever had visited them that night was no bear. Chapter 4. The Encounter. As the strange incidents continued, the Richardsons' unease grew. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, they decided to spend more time in the forest, hoping to catch a glimpse of whatever was lurking in the shadows. One crisp autumn evening, as they sat by the fire, they heard it again. The growl, closer this time. Thomas, armed with a flashlight and a rifle, stepped outside. Ellen followed, her heart pounding in her chest. They moved cautiously towards the edge of the clearing, the beam of the flashlight slicing through the darkness. Then they saw it. Standing at the edge of the forest was a massive figure, covered in dark, matted fur. Its eyes glowed eerily in the light, and it emitted a low, menacing growl. Thomas and Ellen froze, fear rooting them to the spot. The creature stared at them for what felt like an eternity before turning and disappearing into the trees. Shaken, they retreated to their cabin, locking the doors and windows. The next morning, they found more claw marks on the cabin, along with strange, unidentifiable tracks leading into the forest. Chapter 5. The Search for Answers. Determined to uncover the truth, Thomas and Ellen reached out to local experts and researchers. They spoke with cryptozoologists, who were fascinated by their story and eager to investigate. The couple also delved into the history of the area, uncovering tales of Native American legends that spoke of a giant, hairy creature that roamed the forests. As they pieced together the evidence, a clearer picture began to emerge. The creature they had encountered was not just a figment of their imagination, but a living, breathing entity that had roamed these woods for centuries. The construction of the cabins had disturbed its territory, leading to the series of encounters and disturbances. The researchers set up cameras and traps, hoping to capture definitive proof of the creature's existence. While they managed to capture fleeting glimpses and strange sounds, the creature remained elusive, always one step ahead. Chapter 6. The Final Confrontation. As winter approached, the forest grew quieter, the leaves falling and the wildlife retreating into hibernation. Thomas and Ellen, though still wary, had grown accustomed to the presence of the creature. They took precautions, avoiding the woods at night and keeping their cabin well lit. One frigid night, as snow began to fall, they heard it again. The growl, louder and more insistent than ever before. This time, however, there was no fear, only a sense of inevitability. Thomas grabbed his rifle and Ellen picked up a heavy flashlight. Together they stepped outside, ready to face whatever awaited them. The creature stood at the edge of the clearing, its eyes glowing in the darkness. It let out a deafening roar, shaking the trees and sending a flock of birds into the sky. Thomas and Ellen stood their ground, refusing to be intimidated. To their surprise, the creature did not attack. Instead, it seemed to study them, its eyes filled with a strange intelligence. After what felt like an eternity, it turned and walked back into the forest, leaving the couple in stunned silence. Chapter 7. The Aftermath. In the days that followed, the Richardsons' cabin remained untouched, the strange occurrences ceasing as suddenly as they had begun. The researchers, though disappointed by the lack of definitive proof, were convinced that the creature was real. They published their findings, drawing both interest and skepticism from the scientific community. Thomas and Ellen, while still fascinated by the mystery, decided to focus on enjoying their cabin and the beauty of the forest. They had come to an unspoken agreement with the creature, respecting its territory and understanding that they were merely guests in its ancient domain. As the years passed, the story of the strange occurrences in the Mount Shasta forest became a local legend, a tale told around campfires and passed down through generations. The Richardsons continued to visit their cabin, always mindful of the eyes that watched from the shadows. In the end, the forest kept its secrets, the whispering pines holding their mysteries close, and somewhere, deep within the woods, the creature roamed, a guardian of the ancient land, forever a part of the haunting beauty of Mount Shasta. Thanks for visiting this dramatized encounter and experience of Bigfoot. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell. Tell us your thoughts on Bigfoot, and if you have any stories to share, we'd love to hear them.